Hello everyone, welcome to Easy Economics. How are you all doing? Hope you all are doing good. Well, today I brought for you all another paper, paper 1, 0455. This is February, March 2024. This is a very comprehensive paper, so I brought for you all. Let's dive today into the paper and let's see what this paper has for us today. All right. MCQ number 1. MCQ number 1 talks about what causes economic agents to make choices. Now, the moment you see such a question and they ask us to make choices, so the first thing that should come into your mind is the concept of scarcity. Why? Because in economics, we always make a choice when we're talking about scarce economic resources. And when we are talking about scarcity, this means that wants are unlimited and resources are limited. So keeping this thing in mind, keeping the element of scarcity in mind, let's look at the options available. The first option A says limited needs and wants. This is wrong because wants and needs are unlimited. The existence of finite resources. Yes, that's the correct answer. Why? Because finite resources means that resources are limited. Resources are limited. Resources are not infinite. Resources are limited, right? C says the existence of free goods and D says market mechanism. So all options A, C, and D are incorrect. We chop them off. B is the correct answer because it talks about limited resources. It talks about the concept of scarcity and it aligns with the concept of scarcity. So hence for MCQ number 1, the correct response is B. Hope this is clear. Let's move forward. MCQ number 2. MCQ number 2 says a government announces that it will spend an extra $10 billion on healthcare financed by reducing expenditure on defense. What does this mean? This means the government wishes to spend this time more on the provision of healthcare services by reducing its expenditure on defense. So by doing so, they are asking us what is the economic concept represented by this decision. So if the government is moving its resources from the allocation of expenditure on defense towards the provision of more of its healthcare facilities, what economic concept do you think, before let's looking at the options available, is it pointing at? Excellent, it's pointing at opportunity cost. Why? Because like we all know, opportunity cost is the cost of the best alternative foregone due to a particular choice made. And over here, what is the choice made by the government? That this time it's going to be spending more on the provision of healthcare services rather than being spending more on defense. So like we know that every government has limited resources, so it has to make a decision. So when it's making a decision of spending more on the provision of, let's say, healthcare, it's deciding to spend less on defense. So there's an opportunity cost involved. In order to spend more on healthcare, it has to spend less on defense. That is the opportunity cost. So for MCQ number 2, C is the correct response. I hope this is clear. It cannot be A because it says expansionary monetary policy. Here we're not talking about any monetary policy. It cannot be B because it's talking about increased spending on a public good. This is not the concept over here. D says the operation of the market mechanism. It's not talking about market mechanism. Market mechanism is when the demand and the supply are in action. So it's only C is the correct response. All right. Number 3. Number 3 says the diagram shows a PPC for digital TVs and CD players. On the y-axis, they're displaying digital televisions, and on the x-axis, the horizontal axis is displaying the CD players. Now they are giving us different combinations on the PPC, and there are also combinations inside the PPC. Point Y and point X are inside the PPC curve, whereas Z and W are on the PPC. Now they're saying which movement shows an increase in the use of existing resources to increase production for both digital televisions and CD players. Now they are asking us which movement would represent that there has been an increase in the use of the available resources in such a way that both the production of the television sets and the CD players have increased. So, using the current available resources in such a way that both production for CD players and TVs have increased. So, we'll look at this by looking at the options. So, let's look at option A. Option A says from X to W. So, if we are at X and now if we are moving to W, so do you think the availability of both the television sets and the CD players will increase? At X, we were somewhere here for digital TV set. At W, we will be a little less for digital television sets. However, CD players we've increased. But here we say increase in both. So A is not the correct response. C says Z to W. Z to W. If we are moving from point Z to point W, so we were here producing the CD players, and here we were for digital television sets. At W, yes, we will be producing more of CD players. However, we would be falling by this much quantity in the amount for digital television sets, which we do not want. Why? Because in the question, they are asking us that the existing resources should be used in such a way that the provision for both of them should increase. So this is not the correct response. So you'll chop this off. D says from Z to Y. So if you're moving from Z to Y, presently you were on the PPC, now you're moving inside. So this means you are not increasing your production, hence you are decreasing. So again, this is an incorrect response. So by logic, I've shown you that A, C, and D are incorrect. Now let me show you why it's B. Let me erase this first. All right. B says from X to Z. From X, you were initially inside, now you are moving to Z, right? You were at a point where you were inefficiently utilizing your resources, inefficient allocation of resources, underutilization of resources. Now you're moving to point Z, which is on the PPC. So now you're actually utilizing efficiently your resources. So in here, you were producing this much of TVs sets and this much you were producing of CD players. Now when you're moving to point Z, C, you are increasing the production of CD players as well, and both for the digital television sets, and you're also on the PPC. So for 3, it has to be B. I hope you've understood it. Number 4. Number 4 says the diagram shows points on 2 demand curves. All right. First is D1, the another is D2. All right. They're displaying as different points on the demand curves. They're saying which movement between points show a contraction in demand. First, tell me, what do you mean by a contraction in demand? A contraction in demand is a fall in quantity demanded. So what sort of a fall is there in quantity demanded? This is a fall in quantity demanded, which is caused by a rise in the price of the product itself. So any fall in the quantity demanded caused by an increase of the price of the product itself is called as a contraction in demand. So now they're saying which movement of points would depict a contraction in quantity demanded. Let's look at the responses and then let's decide. A says from K to J. So if from K to J, yes, because the price has risen. So initially you were here, now you are moving to J. Initially, you were at point K. Now you have moved to point J. So yes, this is the correct answer. 4, it has to be A, but let's look at the other options available to identify why it can't be the other options. B says from K to M. So if it's from K to M, it's not a contraction in demand, rather it's an extension in demand. So it's chopped off. C says from L to K. From L to K, it's not a contraction in demand, it's a decrease in quantity demanded because you are moving from D2 to D1. So you see, so you're moving from one curve to another curve. So you're moving inside. It's a shift of an entire curve. So it's not a contraction. From M to L, from M to L, again, you are moving on to another demand curve and it's an increase in quantity demanded. It's not a contraction in demand. So again, it's an incorrect answer. So it has to be option A. 4 is A. Number 5. Number 5 says, what would not cause a shift in the supply curve? So this means there are 3 options would cause a shift in the supply curve. There would be only one answer out of these 4 options which would not cause a shift in the supply curve. Changes in cost of production. Changes in cost of production would cause a change in supply curve. So you will chop A. C says changes in indirect taxes. So when there are changes in indirect taxes such as excise duty, so it affects the production costs. So it would affect the decision on the amount of quantity being produced. So C will be chopped off because they're saying which would not cause. D is a change in subsidy from the government. So if the government reduces the subsidy, obviously the producer would be willing to supply less of quantity at each and every price. Similarly, if the government decides to increase the subsidy, the producer would be willing to supply more. So D is an incorrect answer. It's B, changes in direct taxes. Why? Because changes in direct taxes affects what? It affects the demand. It affects the amount that the consumers are willing to spend on a particular product because it affects the purchasing power of the consumers. So it's rather affecting the demand rather than the supply, right? The rest of the 3 options are affecting and impacting the production decision, right? Direct taxes will be affecting the demand of the product and not the supply. So for 5, it has to be B. All right. Number 6. Number 6 says for health reasons, consumers decide that they want to eat more vegetables and less meat. So if they are going for more veggies and less of meat, so this means what? This means that the demand for vegetables will rise and the demand for meat would fall. So if the demand for vegetables would rise, the price for vegetables should increase. And when the demand for meat will be falling, so this means the price for meat should fall. So keeping this thing in mind, the price of vegetables should what? Rise. So chop all the options which says that the price of vegetables would fall, which is A and B. So you'll chop A and B. Why? Because they say the price of vegetables will decrease. No, the price of vegetables has to increase. But what about the price of meat? The price of meat has to fall. So it has to be an increase and a decrease, which is being satisfied by option C. So for number 6, it has to be C. All right. I hope this is clear. Number 7. Number 7 says, what is a likely benefit of a country moving from a mixed economy to a market economy? A mixed economy is an economy in which there's both a private sector and a public sector, and together they provide different goods and services, right? All right. A market economy is an economy in which price mechanism plays an important role, in which consumer sovereignty is a key role, right? All right, so now they're saying what would be a benefit of a country if a country switches from a mixed economy towards a market economy. So what would be the benefit it would be reaping? A says less inequality. No, that's incorrect because once you're moving to market mechanism, once you're moving to market economy, so inequalities tend to rise, not fall. So A is incorrect. More of nationalization, again, it's incorrect because when you're moving towards market economy, there is less nationalization, there is more privatization, right? So B is incorrect. C says more public goods. Again, public goods will not be provided by market economy. Less and less of goods are being provided by private sector. So again, this would not be a benefit. It's incorrect. So by logic, I've shown you that A, B, and C would not be the benefits. It has to be D. Again, why? Because reduced cost of production would be the only benefit because firms try to maximize their profits, and this they could be doing by being efficiently utilizing their resources, right, in such a way that productivity is increasing. So reduced cost of production would be the likely benefit of a country moving from mixed economy towards market mechanism, towards market economy, towards free economy. All right. So for 7, it has to be D. Number 8, what is an external cost of smoking cigarettes? So if cigarettes are being smoked, what would be the negative externality? The cost of the cigarette packaging? No, that would be the private cost to the producer. You chop A off. The cost to non-smokers' health? Yes, it for 8, it has to be B because it's talking about negative externalities. That's the correct answer. Let's look at C and D. C says the cost to smokers. Again, that's a private cost to the consumer. So it does not has to be the correct option. It's incorrect. And D says the tax on cigarettes. No, that's the benefit to the government. Uh, that's again an incorrect response. The external cost is talking about negative externalities, those who are not directly involved neither in the consumption nor the production of the good or the service. So it has to be B. Always keep your definitions intact and you will be able to identify the correct option. All right. Number 9. Number 9 says a firm is considering doubling the price of its product. All right. So now a firm is deciding to double the price of its product, right? Which price elasticity of demand for its product would give it the highest increase in revenue? So they are asking you that if it decides to do so, so in what situation would its revenue be maximized, keeping these price elasticity of demand in front? A is giving you a 0 price elasticity of demand, which is a perfectly inelastic demand. This is a perfectly inelastic demand. This means what? This means that no matter whatever happens to price, there would be no change in quantity demanded. If you look at, I would repeat, no matter whatever happens to the price, the quantity demanded would remain unchanged, right? B, C, and D are all showing us negative signs. What does a negative sign represent? That the price and the quantity demanded moves in opposite directions. So the price is increasing, the quantity demanded would be falling, right? So a negative price elasticity of demand, and now the number is showing the absolute value. So a negative 0.5 would mean that yes, if the price is increasing, so the quantity demanded would fall, but by a lesser percentage. A negative 1 is showing you a unitary price elasticity of demand. This is a unitary price elasticity of demand. And a negative 2 is again showing you that yes, if the price is going to increase, so there would be a larger decrease in the quantity demanded. So now we want to ascertain the impact on the revenue. So if you look at B, C, and D, in all these 3 scenarios, the quantity demanded is going to fall. In B, C, and D, all the 3 scenarios, the quantity demanded is going to fall. It's only in A in which the quantity demanded is going to remain the same if the firm is trying to increase the price. So it's in option A that the firm would be achieving the highest revenue, right? Because we want to have the greatest increase in revenue. In option C and D, you see, in option C, what would happen is it's unitary elastic. So in option C, if the firm is going to increase the price, in option C, if the firm is going to increase the price, the revenue would stay the same with the price change. So you will chop C off because it's unitary price elastic. In option D, the revenue will decrease if the firm is going to double its price. In option B, the revenue will increase because the quantity demanded does not decrease significantly to offset this price increase, but it would not increase as much as if it would be increasing the revenue in option A, where it is perfectly inelastic. Why? Because if the firm is going to double its price, there would be no change in the quantity demanded. So the firm is going to have the highest increase in its revenue. So look at the trick in the question. All right. Because we want to have the highest increase in the revenue, so that's why we are choosing option A. So for 9, it has to be A. Number 10. Number 10 shows the table shows information about 4 financial institutions. They're saying which institution is most likely to be a commercial bank. Now, is a commercial bank the government's bank? No, it's not the government's bank. So you'll shop C and D because it says a yes. So it either has to be A and B. But what about is it owned by shareholders? Yes, it's owned by shareholders. So for 10, it has to be option B. So for 10, it has to be B. All right. Number 11. Number 11 says what shows a forward vertical merger? A vertical merger is when from the sources you are moving towards in the front line of the production process, right? For instance, if you were, let's look at the option. For instance, if you're producing a crop, so now you are, maybe if you were growing cotton, so now you are in the vertical merger forward, you are representing an apparel store, right? Of clothing, a clothing store. That could be an example of a vertical merger forward, right? So option A says a smartphone producer buying a computer chip producer. No, you are going backwards. So it's incorrect. B says a steel producer buys a car producer. Yes, that's correct because you were at the source and now you're going towards the final product. You're moving forward the production line. So it's for 11, it has to be B. That's the correct option. C says a tractor producer buying a wheat producer. No, that's incorrect. D says an oven producer buying a washing machine producer. That's a conglomerate. That's not a vertical merger. So A is incorrect, C is incorrect, D is incorrect. For 11, it has to be B. Number 12 says the diagram shows the demand for and the supply of labor for farm workers. All right, so it's the demand and supply for farm workers. So you are here at point X initially. What will be the new equilibrium if there's an increase in labor productivity? So if there is an increase in labor productivity, so which means that the demand for labor would increase. The supply would remain the same. The demand for labor will increase. We were initially at D1. Now productivity is in rising. So we'll move from D1 to D2. So keeping ourselves on the same supply curve, S1, if we are moving from D1 to D2, which will be the option available? It has to be A. So from X, we'll move to A. Why? Because when productivity is increasing, demand will increase. So from D1, we'll shift to D2. The supply curve would be the same, S1. So from X, we are moving towards A. Hope this is clear. Number 13. Which service is most likely to be supplied by a small business? A small business is one which requires a small setup, small investment, easy to wind up, right? Personalized services. Banking, no. Energy distribution, rail travel all require large investments or are difficult to set up. It's only in a dental treatment where you can offer, cater to a small market, personalized services, easy setup, right? So for 13, it has to be B. Keep the concept in mind and you'll see things would fall accordingly. Number 14. When a firm produces 100 units, its total variable cost was 1,000. The fixed cost was $4,000. What is the firm's average total cost? Average total cost calculate. You need to calculate. So average total cost is equals to the total cost divided by the total output. So the total cost would be what? 4,000 plus 1,000 is a $5,000 divided by how many units were you producing? 100. So 5,000 divided by 100, we're getting what? 50. So it has to be $50. Simple maths. You'll add the variable cost and the fixed cost to give you the total cost. So the variable cost plus the fixed cost gave you the total cost, which came out to be $5,000. So this $5,000, when you divide it by the 100 units, that was the total output being produced. So you came to know the average total cost, right? Number 15. At a price of $5, the demand for a firm's product is 1,000 units per week. So when the price was $5, the demand was 1,000 units per week. All right. When its price rises to $10, the demand for its product falls to 600 units per week. All right. What are the changes in the firm's average revenue and total revenue when the price of its product rises? So let's take out first the total revenue. When the price was $5 and the demand was 1,000, so what was the total revenue? 5 into 1,000? $5,000. That was the total revenue. And when the price rose to $10, what was the total revenue? 10 into 600? 10, the unit price into the quantity 600. So the total revenue $6,000. That's the total revenue. So by how much the total revenue rose? $1,000. The total revenue rose by $1,000, right? So change in total revenue per week was what? $1,000. So it could either be A or it could either be C, right? So you can chop B and you can chop D. What about the average total revenue? Initially, the total revenue was 5,000. So 5,000 divided by 5 was what? $5. So the average revenue initially was $5, right? And when the total revenue was 6,000, so the average revenue was what? 6,000 divided by 10? $600. 6,000 divided by 600. 6,000 divided by 600, the quantity. So it was 6,000, right? 600 divided by 6,000. Yes, it was 6,000 divided by 600, which is giving us a $10, right? So this means how much we are up by? We are up by a $5. So the changes in average revenue is an up by $5 and the changes in total revenue is an up by $1,000. So satisfying both the equations, we will identify that it's option A. So for 15, it has to be option A. It cannot be C because in option C, it says that the change in average revenue is an up by $10. No, it's not an up by $10. When we'll divide 6,000 by 600 per unit, we are going to get $10. So initially, the average revenue was $5. And in the next week, the change in average revenue was $10. So the difference is an up by, the increase by $5. So it has to be option A. So for 15, it has to be A. I hope this is clear.